Of every new addition in Shadow of the Erdtree, the Abyss is my least favorite. Not just because it's empty, and not just because of the semi-invulnerable frenzy monsters or giant rats with 10,000 health. No, it's my least favorite because it's quite possibly the greatest missed opportunity. The Abyss should have been an invasion zone. That idea probably strikes you in one of two ways. Either you agree with me entirely because you're a reasonable person who understands what makes invading great, or you disagree with me because you like it when games waste your time, but only if no one else can participate. If you're in the latter camp, however seriously, I'm not going to convince you of anything. I love invasions and wish Elden Ring had more tools to facilitate them. If you think they're fine as is, or even too much, we have nothing more to talk about. For everyone else, let's continue. Imagine how rewarding this area could have been if, once you reached the dungeon, you had the option to join with a faction as an agent of chaos, protecting the zone for whatever reason. How great would it be to earn a few Frenzied Flame incantations by performing some NPC invasions against, say, the followers of Miquella, not unlike the Volcano Manor? Shadow of the Erdtree had no issue reusing any other piece of content, so why not one of the best quest lines? Think about how your horseless slog through a forced stealth zone with nothing to find but disappointment could have instead been a gauntlet of endless PvP and opposition. Gankers could have posted up away from the lanterns or in the dungeon itself, holding off an onslaught of invaders seeking to purge the frenzied wasteland. All those heavy-handed notes on the ground could have referenced the servants of chaos who prowl relentlessly, hunting those foolish enough to trespass on desecrated ground. Every single aspect of the design, the themes, the environment, the lore, all scream how good it would be for forced PvP. And with the incredible size of the area, it could have held massive matches. Easily 3v3, if not much more, if they felt so inclined. Truly, I think this might be the biggest missed opportunity of the entire DLC, but that is a very long list. So let's elaborate on why this one sits so high as a candidate. First and foremost, it's otherwise empty. This should come as no surprise to anyone who's explored the area, but it's functionally vacant. There's a stretch where stealth is required to avoid the lanterns, but otherwise it's just a slow run through a really big zone to get to a surprisingly small dungeon. PvP would help to mix that up. It takes this pit at the bottom of the world with nothing to do and makes it a gauntlet of the worst humanity has to offer. If there's one place invaders deserve to roam, it'd be the Abyss. But it's not just empty, it's scary too. The atmosphere of the zone is on point. It's not a place that seems remotely inviting to even the most hardened Tarnished. And if there's one thing invasion should embody, it's fear. Fear of conflict, of uncertainty. Fear of death at the hands of another. The tainted woods of the Abyss are the perfect place to be slaughtered by another player, overtaken by madness. The idea that you can go into the woods and not be stalked by a motivated killer is honestly a little offensive to me. Add to that the fact that the woods are dark. Not too dark to see, but dark in the way that they're entirely void of sunlight. It creates the right mood for violence, like a Saw movie. It wouldn't make sense to saw off your own foot in broad daylight, but with some harsh artificial lighting or dingy air, suddenly it doesn't seem like such a bad idea. Anything to get out of those chains and out of that place. Because the dark shouldn't just be metaphorical. It shouldn't just look scary. It should be scary. And what scares players more than other players who might whoop their ass? Especially if there could be more than one. That's right, I'm talking Taunter's Tongue rules. And not just Taunter's Tongue 2v2, I want hard limits on the host team's side to keep on brand. The sides stay balanced. 2v2, 3v3, 4v4, whatever it takes to make sure the host never gets a full advantage. And the invaders can't hit each other. Frenzy is a unifying presence after all. It's the host against the dark and all it can muster. They don't even have their faithful steed beside them. Because how scary are the dark woods if you can just ride through them? You need to be thrown from your mount in fear to truly understand where you tread. Elden Ring already forbids mounts in multiplayer, so it's the perfect excuse to open the floodgates. If you have to walk all the way to your destination, you might try to take the shortest, quickest path. The stealth sections can slow you down, sure, but wouldn't it be a lot more appealing if players stood in your way? If no matter how well you traveled, you'd never truly be unopposed. Isn't that in the spirit of the Abyss? And isn't that in the spirit of Frenzy? When the Great possessing Yura's body told me to seek the Three Fingers and let chaos take the world, I bought into a specific idea, that things needed to be worse. The lands between had a problem with cycles and repeating mistakes, so in the immortal words of Zeo, it seems only right to burn it down and walk away. And that's exactly what the Frenzied Flame ending gives us. It's an ending that doesn't pull any punches. It even encourages Melina to confess her feelings for us and try to cover it up by threatening to kill us. Such a tsundere. But it really does make sense that any character who embodies the ideals of the Frenzied Flame should have a place to rage, somewhere to fight where God can't see, and there's no better place than the Abyss. Miquella has no crosses down there. None of the NPCs make it part of their journey. It's just an entirely separate area forgotten by anyone who isn't completely devoted to depravity. They even saw fit to add a hostile player model NPC via the Madding Hand, who is exactly everything an invader could be. A crazy guy roaming the woods with a glove made of skin. Why not go the whole 9 yards and let players embrace the chaos? It almost seems like FromSoftware were scared of their own lore, that by allowing players to be forcibly, repeatedly invaded in an area, they'd be letting their game change in a way that was at all representative of the themes it claims to incorporate. It'd be actually letting chaos take a very small portion of the world, and they just couldn't handle it. Instead, they settled for making it extremely boring. When I first found my way down through the Darklight Catacombs, I had no idea what I was in for. Needless to say, I was immensely disappointed. The literal warning signs gave away what little surprise there was with the lanterns, and then to realize there isn't anything to find? It's just so underwhelming. Sure, there's a copy-paste church on one end and a dungeon on the other, but that's hardly what I consider an engaging area. If mandatory stealth sections in a game with a single stealth mechanic are your thing, I guess the few parts where that comes up might be very rewarding. If you've always wanted to fight the beefiest rats ever created, then you're in luck. But if you wanted something unexpected to happen, this just isn't the place. It's such a hard thing to accept that the nothing we got is better than anything else. It's even harder to accept that all the conditions are right for endless PvP, and Elden Ring just hates PvP that much. Especially because, and this might be the biggest point, it's an optional area. Elden Ring prides itself on player freedom more than anything. It makes sure that no matter what, you don't have to confront an obstacle until you are absolutely ready. So if the game were to have a forced PvP zone, it only makes sense that it would be somewhere you never have to go. The only players affected would be those who wanted to participate or wandered in by way of curiosity or mistake. And it's not like they can't just fast travel out. It's an easy compromise with shockingly few downsides. So let me conclude my argument simply. This seems obvious. Obviously, they should have done this. The only reason I can think not to is just to make the area as quick and inconsequential as possible. A get in, find the dungeon, kill the boss, and get out type scenario. Which is, of course, what we got. I suppose there's also something to be said for making the zone lonely, but realistically there's too much life down there for that to be the case anyway. The Abyss of Dark Souls was an endless pit of black, and that was a lot better at capturing a sense of isolation. Instead, I think it'd be best to embrace that, more than anything, the Abyss of Elden Ring is a place of madness, and darkness where terrible things dwell. Invaders are a perfect fit. And if you want chaos, and I want chaos, the more the scarier. It's no secret that being invaded is something of a novelty. Sure, some of them can teach you a hard lesson, but many are mere fodder in the face of endless explosion spam from 2 or 3 players. If you want to humble overpowered hosts and their friends, send as many invaders as possible. I know 3v3 is proven ground for Souls games, but I'd be open to larger battles. Honestly, the 6-player limit always felt so small to me even back in 2016, and I'd love to see 8 or 10 or even more players. Hell, a 100-player free-for-all Frenzy Zone would be right up my alley. And it's difficult to accept that this was likely never even a consideration. That FromSoftware never had any interest in incorporating PvP as a primary feature of an area. That something that would have given players like me so much to do never even crossed their minds. I could be wrong, but Shadow of the Erdtree stands as a monument to Elden Ring's refusal to engage with PvP in any serious capacity, and the Abyss stands as possibly its most notable miss. Otherwise, that's all for this video. I have shockingly little to look forward to now that Shadow of the Erdtree has finalized all my worst fears, so I'm left to speculate as to what could have been and what may one day be in another game. I greatly appreciate the support of my audience, and hopefully this video isn't too much of a downer. I really did enjoy the DLC, but I can't shake all the missed opportunities that could have kept me engaged for years to come. If you have any other suggestions for things you want me to highlight with the DLC, please let me know down below. For someone who loves PvP but thinks invasions need a lot of work and doesn't like to duel, I'm left with a pretty hollow future with this game. I'll likely be branching out to other games or topics before long, and hope I can keep it interesting for you. Until then, thank you for watching.